What? What is... Like I told the other freshmen, Aisle 14, row 11 is where you will find the proceedings of the Council of Magi. Now, hurry along. What is it now? As I said... Oh, it is you, our honored guests. My apologies. You know how the younglings can be, You must be here for the top 10 thingies. Come, right this way. Tucked away in the trivium of the Crystarium, we find our first location, and one that's quite spectacular right off the bat. The bookshelves in this place line every spot possible. I can only imagine they might have even considered at one point hanging books from the ceiling if they could reasonably retrieve them. The spiraling staircase, bringing you all the way up through various shelves and aisles, has a very unique feeling to it compared to all the other libraries we'll be approaching today. Even having books in the distance that you can't interact with help bring it together to show that there's more than what the player needs in here to interact with. The only real downside to this place, and you'll see that for quite a few of the libraries we'll be going to, is there's actually no books to interact with outside of when you are doing quests around this area. It would have been a nice place to dump a little story or two, maybe some lore, or even just fill out the place with other various stories like we often get on the Lodestone once in a while. If you look closely at the outer walls of the bookshelves, you'll notice they use the same repeating bookshelf pattern, which is a great way to save resources and something most players aren't probably going to be looking for. But as you see when we go in other libraries, they sometimes have a little bit of variety to their bookshelves at least. There's also a windowed area in this place, which is nice depending on the weather you have. I got really lucky and got some rain when I was visiting here. So we get a nice little rain as we read about our books throughout the library. I love when areas do this as well, where you can see either down into chambers or up into chambers that you can't access, implying that the place is much larger than the player needs to walk around. If you were with me on my walk along around Foundation, we briefly stepped into this place. This is St. Indalim's Scholasticate. This beautiful little school, as you might want to put it, hosts its own library to the side. This place has an entire series quest tied to it, so I recommend coming here and checking it out if you want a bit more of a dive into some of the history of Heavensward. Originally, this place was used by the very evil Pope to help direct the people in a way that is most befitting to him and not for the betterment of education. The bookshelves themselves are bookshelves you can get as a housing item, which I found kind of cool. And here as well, you can see there is at least some variety amongst the bookshelves. For some reason, this person over here is using opera glasses to scan the bookshelves for the book she is looking for. I have to imagine there's a better method for doing this, but it's funny nonetheless. Overall, just a beautiful place to visit with the light piercing through the stained glass windows and all the amazing lore you can take in if you choose to do the quest lines here. And now for a library, or I guess more of a book collection, which we're going to be bending library a bit here anyway, within the Strayborough Deadwalk of all places. Over here in the spooky Endless House, we find many bookshelves lining the walls. The halls here are so varied and different from room to room, making every little nook and cranny feel unique, and a place that most people are going to sprint through, considering this is indeed a dungeon, as tanks like to wrap up all the enemies in one big package rather than sitting back and enjoying the views. There's just something about the spooky aesthetic dungeons that I love so much, and maybe we'll do a little peek in on some of them come October. All the halls in shambles, even the windows have this sort of spooky horror house thing you would see, where they're kind of fakely animated intentionally to make it look like something's banging on them or winds passing through them. All these little details that make it feel like a house of horror that you're visiting on Halloween, and it's just the best. Not only with this dungeon, but with all dungeons, I highly recommend coming back in Explorer mode. You'd be surprised how many little details you've missed. Now, I'd be remiss not to include this location, the Great Gubal Library, a place riddled with libraries in itself, libraries within libraries, columns. It's almost shocking that not every wall is covered in books in this place. Even in these secondary chambers as we pass through, we get towers of books lining up and down, farther than the eye can even see. All the books scattered around the ground as if they were in quite a hurry to get out. Either that or maybe treasure hunters showed up to pillage the location. And with what I said earlier, we do indeed get books to read scattered throughout that give us various lore on the world. Though, given that it's in a dungeon, it's kind of hard to sit there and convince your team to read them. Thankfully, they have introduced the exploration mode now, though. I love these separate chambers as you go farther into the Great Gubal Library that feel more like museums or trophy rooms from whoever may have been occupying these individual locations. And as we get even farther in, it gets even more spooky. The books start to glow, bookshelves chained up as if they're all forbidden books and knowledge that any visitor is forbidden to access. I really do recommend taking a glance at some of the books, as some of them are quite entertaining to read. This one, for instance, called Proceedings of the Council of Magi. And let's give it a read right here. Proceedings of the 284th Convocation of the Amdapori Council of Magi. A vote was called to settle on a name for a potent and newly fashioned healing spell. Being that said healing spell was an augmentation of Kiraga, erst the most potent healing spell, the following names were proposed by the council. Kirago, Kiraza, Kiraja, Kiragura, finding the aforewritten names duly lacking in gravity, and the existing hierarchy of spell names endlessly obtruse. The council did vote by a margin of 17-3 to do away with existing naming conventions entirely and adopt a new system of numerical spell names, as writ below, to be used henceforth. Kia 1, Kia 2, Kia 3, Kia 4. It is recorded. If you have made it through Shadowbringers, then you have passed through this place. The Bookman's Shelves over in Mheg. I love how lived in this place feels like. It almost feels like an atelier that you might see in the Atelier game series, with how dense and crowded everything feels and worn in. Truly a place that had many studies go down. With how disheveled and disorganized everything is, I assume the caretaker was much more concerned with their books than anything else. Though, who's to say the Fae weren't the ones causing a mess in here? Strangely too, there's even this storage room upstairs, which doesn't really have much going on in it. Alas, if only we could clean it up ourselves, we could make use of this upper room to a better suiting. The architecture of the walls in this location, as well as other various parts, is very, well, varied, and makes every wall interesting to look at, compared to some of the more drab locations we see. I guess they were really able to pack a lot of details into this building, considering it's one of only few in the location of Mheg. Have you been looking up in these chambers as well? You may want to start doing that, as there's these really cool skeleton heads that you can see up on one of the sides of a dinosaur of some regard and a very large Cervinae. Just a great place to hang out if you're okay with the fairly frequent sprouts passing by here, as I surprisingly saw quite a few. It's also worth mentioning that the elementals chart is indeed in here. You might want to give it a look over, given our next location we are heading to in Evercold. It might give you a little insight as to forthcomings. Now, I did say I was pushing what it meant to be a library, and this is one just that. Over in Lominsa, in the Coral Tower, better known as the Marauders Guild, we find various bookshelves lining the walls. I like to imagine these are documentations that are being hosted here. Given the various dealings the Marauders have to deal with, I assume they have a lot of documentation and records they need to keep tallied for the leadership of Limsa Lominsa, as well as various laws they need to uphold. Perhaps even in here they have documentations on training for the various marauders they bring on. I just love how these bookshelves look, as they are very tight and isolated and have all these various framings with cabinets all lining them, as if there are important documents shoveled within them, or maybe even evidence that they keep on hand in case they need it. Just one of the last places you would expect to see bookshelves lining the walls is that within our berserk axe-wielding maniacs. Though I guess the ones here are a little more level-headed than Curious Gorge. The Sharlayans love their books, and over here in the Studium, we can see just that. Here we can see all manner of things archived, and even get to read a few of these books during some quests, though they're mostly just fluff or funny things. And strangely, they have these like weird magical bridges here. I don't know why they would want these to turn on and off. Maybe they're worried about robbers stealing documentations, but given that the place is so open, I doubt that would really stop them. It is a strange choice to say the least. We can even see again, we can glance down and see multiple floors, which seem to be an exact copy of what we are participating in now. If you do come here, I recommend watching some of the Mamets, as they have a little schedule they go about, and even go off into chambers that you do not have access to. The Mamets at the counter even has a bunch of documents that you can read about. Consider it renting a book on the spot, I guess. Oh, you thought we were done with the Sharlayans? Oh no. They very much love their books, and over here in the Archeion of the Labyrinthos, we find even more documents and books shoveled in. Though, given how these are stored, I like to assume they are storing more than just books in here, given the large cabinets we can find strewn about. I love these weird chamber cylinders that you see around here that have these crank levers that I assume when you crank them, the bookshelf slowly extends out, allowing you to access the documents within inside it. Almost feels like a specimen chamber or something similar to that note. Just a very creative way to display it. Alas, if only they had the budget, maybe we could have seen an animation of one of the NPCs opening and closing these constantly. Though the imagination of the idea there is still enough to be really cool. As well, if you glance at the upper levels, we can see that a lot of the cabinets sections have open cabinets here. Strangely, not on the lower floor. Were they concerned we were going to parkour on these? I'm not sure why they would. That would be an issue, but alas, here we are. Just a weird detail to keep exclusive to the upper floors. Maybe you could make an argument that the caretakers are too busy downstairs to keep a watchful eye on anybody being disheveled and disorganized on the upper floors. Over in Northhorn, we can find a very octagonal library, and one with many bookshelves lining this central location, where you have a critical encounter boss battle. Something about how open this place is, due to it needing to fit a boss in the center, is very funny to me. And as a result, everything in here is of gargantuan size. Even seeing me next to some of these books is something my Mikoke could probably not even lift by herself. They also have a surprising amount of variation on the bookshelves. I guess their rule of thumb is, can the player reach it, and how far away is it, for how much different versions of the books lining the shelves they're willing to do. There's also these various ladders used to reach the higher levels of the bookshelves, though sadly, since this is a combat zone, they must have been worried that the player could try to cheese something in some way, so we unfortunately cannot go on top of these as much as I tried. This boss here is very fun to fight, as it spawns all these various books around, but the various wordings and translations they used here make it a little unclear and confusing, especially if you played some of the older Final Fantasy games, as when you step in these various books, it more or less acts like level 10 or level 5 or level whatever version of Death or Doom from the older games. And that if you are a multiple of any of the numbers listed, you will die instantly. The part that makes this confusing is they use just various spells to indicate this, such as Holy, which normally wouldn't kill you regardless of its level, which I found kind of funny and weird way to go about it, but still makes for a fun encounter regardless. The boss here is rather fantastic as its entire body is an ink jar and it has little old-fashioned pin nubs for hands and droopy little ink dripping legs. It's quite a fantastic design. Even the various book animations when you see its pages open have little drawings of the weird creature it's drawing on display. And for some reason it has this very sassy cast animation sometimes. It's amazing, honestly. Now, for our dishonorable mention, and one you didn't even know was a library, the Daguerreo Medical Collection. Hosted over in Living Memory, we can find the Medical Collection building. A quite beautiful building from the outside, but sadly that is where it ends, as we cannot enter this building, nor can we enter any building that I can recall living memory, which is sad to see, honestly, as it would have been nice to walk in here and see a nice collection of things strewn about. We do strangely even have a quest here where the person wants you to go collect some documents pertaining to this medical facility. It's a shame we didn't get to see inside here because it would have given us some nice insight as to how the people often occupy their medical studies, as that's not something we get to really see very often within the Final Fantasy world. Now for one of the coolest details within a library, over in Matoya's Relict, we enter another spooky dungeon. And this one has gobs and gobs of books stacked in various piles and shelves, lining the back area of the arena for Porksy. But behind these is this nice little detail of these wood engravings on these various spots in the back. We get to see pixel art from some of the old jobs of Final Fantasy, such as White Mage, Monk, and if you look at the very back, something that you might have missed, which is, yes, that's right, a Red Mage one is hidden behind the oven. A very cute little detail that can be quite easy to miss. I also find these ones kind of funny, as you're definitely not meant to look at them, despite these little nods to the older games hidden in the back, as the books just kind of get cut off when we hit the curved part of the bookshelf. So I feel like there's a contradiction in what the devs want from us. Small little Easter eggs, plus bookshelves that don't really make too much sense in the end of it. Regardless though, many of the libraries we've seen today have quite a lot of little fun details hidden about them. And I'm sure there's some here that I didn't mention that you are quite fond of as well. So that's going to do it for this Top 10 Thingies video. If you want to see more, I got another video up here, some more video down here, over here, subscribe, share this video if you like it, as it really helps the channel if you do that. Thank you to my members, and thank you for watching. Bye bye!